What if right now, every plant, all the algae, and every cyanobacterium on Earth just stopped? What if for 24 hours, the single most important chemical reaction on our planet simply ceased to exist? You'd expect the world to go dark, but the sun would still be shining. You'd expect to suffocate, but your first breath would feel exactly the same. The immediate reality is much stranger. The first thing you would notice isn't a change in the air or the light. The first thing you would notice is the silence. A deep, profound, and unnatural quiet, as if the entire planet was holding its breath. And in that silence, a hidden countdown would begin, ticking towards a catastrophe that has almost nothing to do with the oxygen you breathe. Hey, I'm Leo, and welcome to Everyday Ifs. Today, we're flipping the switch on the engine of life itself to discover that the real danger of a day without photosynthesis isn't what you've been taught. It's a far more subtle and far more lethal chain of events. Let's start the clock. Time zero, the moment it happens. Deep in the Amazon, a biologist named Alex is calibrating a sensor that measures the faint hum of insect life. He's been here for months. The rainforest is never quiet. It's a constant layered symphony of clicks, chirps, and rustles. But at this exact moment, his monitors flatline. He takes off his headphones. The symphony is gone, not quieted. Gone. The billions of tiny herbivores that feed directly on plant matter, the caterpillars, the beetles, the leafhoppers, have had their food source turn inert. It's no longer food, it's just matter. This is the first domino. On a cosmic scale, the sun is blasting our planet with 173,000 terawatts of energy every single moment. Now, that number is so big, it's basically nonsense. So let me put it this way. That is more than 10,000 times the energy consumption of our entire global civilization, arriving every single second. And normally, our planet just calmly breathes it in. Normally, the green machinery of Earth captures a slice of that power, turning light into life. But now, it's not. All that energy is just arriving, hitting the surface, and turning into nothing but waste heat. The planet is, for the first time in billions of years, rejecting the sun's gift. But Alex, in his lab, wouldn't feel that heat. Yet, he'd feel the creeping silence, an apocalypse of stillness, emptiness, and dread. The very base of the food web has been vaporized. By hour 3, the silence starts to creep up the chain. The small birds that eat the insects fall quiet. The predators that hunt them find nothing but ghosts. The world isn't just quiet. It feels empty. It feels wrong. But what about the oceans? They are the true lungs of our planet, home to vast blooms of phytoplankton that produce more than half our oxygen. Well, in our scenario, that engine is also off. These microscopic life forms have lifespans measured in days. Without the ability to photosynthesize, they simply die. Trillions upon trillions of them, all at once. They stop converting sunlight, stop producing food, and begin to sink. In the first few hours, the surface of the ocean would turn unnervingly clear, a beautiful, crystalline, and completely sterile blue. It's the color of death. The krill that feed on them would find an empty pantry, then the fish that eat the krill, then the whales. In a matter of hours, we've triggered a global marine extinction event. It's a silent, cascading collapse happening just beneath the waves. But let's be honest, you and I are still breathing fine. So, if we're not running out of air, what is the real-time bomb we teased at the start? You think the problem is a lack of production, but what if the problem is a lack of consumption? This brings us to the great cognitive dissonance of this scenario. We think photosynthesis gives us oxygen, and it does, but its more immediate, minute-to-minute job is to take away carbon dioxide. Our planet's atmosphere is a delicate, razor-thin balance. We, along with our cars, our factories, and our power plants, are constantly exhaling CO2. Every second of every day, we pump about 1.5 million kilograms of it into the air. And every second, the world's plants are supposed to be breathing it in for us. By hour 9, that vital service has been offline for a third of a day, and the consequences are starting to become physical. Back in the Amazon, Alex feels it first. His breathing is a little heavier. A dull headache is blooming behind his eyes. He checks his atmospheric instruments, thinking they must be broken. They aren't. His atmospheric instruments show the CO2 concentration, normally stable around 420 parts per million, is climbing. A few parts per million might sound tiny, but in the finely tuned machine of our atmosphere, it's the equivalent of dumping an extra 50 train cars full of pure carbon into the air every single minute. 421, 422. It's a slow, relentless march upwards. The entire planet is now trapped in a sealed room with a running engine. As we cross the 12-hour mark, half a day without life's engine, the world starts to look different. The slow but steady increase in CO2 and that subtle shift in waste heat are beginning to play tricks on the atmosphere. The sky, which gets its color from the way light scatters off of molecules, begins to change. The familiar blue would soften, shifting towards a pale, sickly yellow-green, a color no human has ever seen dominate the sky. It would be a planetary symptom of a fever. For Alex, things are getting worse. His lab is sealed against the jungle, but the air inside is still drawn from the outside. The headache is now a pounding migraine. He feels confused, dizzy. This is hypercapnia, CO2 poisoning. Outside, the animals that haven't starved are feeling it too. They are becoming sluggish, disoriented. They are slowly being sedated by the very air they breathe. The wind carries no scent of flowers or damp earth. It just smells of nothing. The wind itself feels thin, carrying a strange, sterile heat. The oceans are suffering a far worse fate. The sea is the world's greatest carbon sink, absorbing vast quantities of CO2, but without the phytoplankton to process it, that CO2 dissolves and forms carbonic acid. The pH of the ocean's surface begins to drop. It's becoming more acidic for anything with a shell. From the tiniest plankton to the mightiest coral reef, this is a death sentence. Their calcium carbonate shells would literally begin to fizz away. Imagine a sound you could never hear, a planetary scale whisper of dissolving skeletons, a silent, chemical scream. Now we're at hour 20, the final act. The global CO2 level has risen by several parts per million. That might not sound like a lot, but it's an atmospheric change that should take years, crammed into less than a day. In cities where CO2 levels are already higher, people are feeling it acutely. Widespread lethargy, confusion, and panic. Emergency services would be overwhelmed with people suffering from respiratory distress, but no one would know why. The air still has plenty of oxygen. This is the killer, not a sudden, dramatic suffocation, but a slow, creeping poisoning. A failure of the planet's respiratory system. For Alex, the end is near. CO2 levels in his small enclosure are critical. His movements are slow. His thoughts are clouded. He stumbles to the viewport and looks out. He sees a world he no longer recognizes. The forest is utterly still, a painted backdrop of green under a nauseating yellow sky. He presses his hand to the glass, a witness to a complete, systemic breakdown. The world isn't dying from a single wound. It's dying from a failure of its most fundamental rule, the rule that says light becomes life. The final hour ticks by, a planet of silence, sickness, and acid. Then, at the 24-hour mark, the switch flips back on. Instantly, trillions upon trillions of chloroplasts flicker to life. The great green engine of Earth sputters and restarts. Plants begin to breathe in the poisoned air. Phytoplankton, the survivors, begin to churn through the carbon-choked seas. For Alex, the change is almost imperceptible at first, a slight easing of the pressure in his skull. The air feels a tiny bit cleaner. He survived. Humanity survived. But this is no happy ending. When Alex finally unseals his lab and steps outside, the silence is still there. But it's no longer the silence of suspense. It's the silence of a tomb. The mass extinctions of the smallest creatures at the base of the food web are permanent. The food chain is not just damaged, it is shattered. The coral reefs are bleached and dying, unable to recover from the acid bath. Entire ecosystems built over millennia have been erased in a day. We survived the 24 hours, but the world we've returned to is a ghost of its former self. We've learned the hard way that photosynthesis isn't just a part of our world. It's the constant, invisible and tireless miracle that builds it, second by second, from nothing more than sunlight, water, and air. And we learned that if its heartbeat were to ever stop, the silence it leaves behind would be the most terrifying sound of all.